I used to get weed from him, and then he didn't have it once. So he said, but I got a buddy in Medellín. He had his own plane. I'll fly over there. And that's where I met Pablo Escobar.
Hey.
Pablo was sending loads were so big. He said, that's it. He went to planes and cocaine, and then I went to Jamaica and started doing my own thing. They had weed and nobody to sell it to. That's the worst thing you could tell me, because when I got arrested, I had 20,000 in my pocket and 6 passports with different names. Couldn't finish what I was saying because there was at least 100 red dots on me. There was 2 barmaids, they were agents. They had guns on me. They had girls in a pool with guns and plastic bags. They blew me away. I went and had to suffer for 32 plus years. But when you give someone life, no parole, you're coming home in a body bag. Put me in solitary for the first 5 years. I had to fight rats for 2 nights. You ever try fighting rats? You heard the movie Con Air with Nicolas Cage? Well, I lived it.
Really?
I lived it. You know, who was behind me was 3 Somali pirates. Oh. Put the knife to my right wrist. I said, let's cut his hand off. And, you know, I said some things about his mother that he didn't like.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the NJ Content Studio Show. I'm your host, John Bertino, here with
Steven Bacanta, the one and only.
And this is going to be a great one, guys. We're really excited to be here with the team from Little Leaf Labs and the GrowFather. Let's start with you, Mr. Martorano. Please just introduce yourself.
Well, happy to be here. Love this little town. I have some history. If you want me to tell you a story about Haddonfield, you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed in this town. Anyway, I'm George Martorano. I'm the GrowFather. I've been GrowFather for a little while now. We have a cannabis product in Jersey and other places, other states, called the GrowFather. And the reports I get on a daily basis that we got the best product around. If you ever go in any dispensaries in Jersey, you'll see the coolest pack. When you see the coolest packaging, you'll know right away.
Well, let's show them right now, George.
GrowFather, yes.
I mean, so this is, well, I just got handed this. So it's a 2-gram cannabis vape. Packaging's absolutely beautiful. And as marketers, Steven and I can't wait to unpack it. So we'll be getting into this in a little bit. But let's get the other guests. So, Mike.
Hi, Michael Foglietta, founder of Little Leaf Labs, a micro manufacturing facility down in South Jersey in Salem County. And our in-house brand is the GrowFather, and George is our inspiration and our ambassador for the brand.
Awesome.
Now I know why you call it Little Leaf.
Correct.
Like now, I just put 2 and 2 together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bravo.
You knew the Italian translation?
I knew it, but I didn't put 2 and 2. The folio means leaf, so fogliette, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Means like the little leaf. I didn't. When you said it earlier, I didn't put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah,
but
that's what it is.
Bravo,
Good.
pecans.
Yeah.
It happens.
It's the Italian background.
Good Irish guy, I see there.
A bunch of good mix we are.
And Mr. Capurso.
Yes, Chris Capurso. I am the co-founder and COO of Little Leaf Labs and the GrowFather.
Nice. Yeah, and so, all right. So before we get into George's story, and it's quite the story it is, how'd you guys meet each other?
So George actually came to visit me in the desert. I was doing black market cannabis growing in the desert. So Michael, George, and Kaz came, and same attire, suit jacket, and like this nice dress, like pretty much leather snakeskin shoes to the desert. Complete sand beach, just poles and greenhouses. I had 3,500 plants in the ground out there.
Hey-o.
Yeah. So I was growing weed, and obviously George's background, he was naturally attracted to me. I went back to their Airbnb in Palm Springs, and then I started hearing, some of the stories that George will tell you.
You didn't know anything about it?
No, not at all. Well, I mean, I had a friend in New York that had already met them, so I had some background on who George was, but I didn't look him up or anything like that. It's not what I do. I kind of take people for who they are. So then I started hearing George's story, and I met Michael, of course, and learned about his story. And I was just naturally attracted to, their dynamic. And, sooner than later, Michael got licensed here in New Jersey. He told me about the opportunity. Being from New York, I wanted to move back here. So, George's story being such a legacy inspiration, I really wanted to run with that in New Jersey and put my, black market or legacy skills in this region, to the test.
Yeah.
Now, and Mike and George, my understanding is you guys have known each other since childhood. Is that right?
Yeah, we didn't have a choice. We were born together.
Pull that mic a little closer, Mike.
Yeah, we didn't have a choice. We were born together. Our families go back 3 generations, George, from 7th and Fitzwater.
Wow. Yeah.
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 In South Philly.
7th and Fitzwater. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, South Philly. We're still there.
Wow. Wow. So you guys grew up together, stayed in touch all these years, and
Yeah, absolutely. It's a Bella Vista area now, but it's still a very tight community. And our families were one of the original families back in the 1800s.
wow, came over from Italy to here.
Yes, exactly.
Built
Wow.
the Ben Franklin Bridge. This guy's
Oh
grandfather.
shit.
Yeah.
George's grandfather. Tell me your grandfather, George, when he came over with some of the recipes for some of the root beer.
Yeah, my grandfather had Flea, Italy. It was
Flea.
a great, and incidentally, I'm ready to sign a scripted series deal all my life called The Philadelphian, but I've been arguing with them because I want to call it The GrowFather. Anyway, my grandfather, Alfonso Pisa, my mother's maiden name, he came from a neighborhood in Palermo, and they had some businesses, and one brother, Valdo, wanted to become a priest. So back in those days, if you can create a dowry, substantial dowry, you got to the Vatican. So the family knew that, and they put together $20,000, which was a fortune. And my great uncle Valdo went to the Vatican, and the only communication back then was letters. There was no phone, and they were getting letters mailed from the Vatican right to the parish priest in our area, and he was instrumental getting my great uncle to the Vatican, and then they didn't hear from him, my uncle Valdo, for a good while. The family was asking the priest, and the priest was just telling them things that they wanted to hear, I imagine. My grandfather took a train across Sicily, across Italy to the Vatican, and he took him days to get an interview, and he found, where's my brother? And they finally took him down below the Vatican, the catacombs, and they had him in a cell. And they were trying to re-indoctrinate him, but he wanted to leave the priesthood. And what happened was when my grandfather first seen his brother, his older brother, he wasn't his brother anymore. He took a nervous breakdown. And my grandfather was very upset, very adamant. So he said, I want my brother. So he takes his brother, and I want my money. I want the 20,000. So he takes his brother and the 20,000 back across Italy, back across Sicily to Palermo. And when then he realized, the Vatican told him, we were giving updates to your parish priest, but the parish priest wasn't telling the updates to the family. I don't know why. I don't know, maybe Vatican, he had somebody in Vatican tell him to keep it low key or something. Anyway, my grandfather was a very strong man, and he hit the priest 1 or 2 shots and killed him.
Oh
shit.
So when you kill a priest in Italy, 2 things are going to happen. The Vatican is going to get the mob to kill you, or the mob's going to kill you for principle. But because there were so many lies, and my family was telling the truth, when you got in trouble back in those days, you got banished to another town.
Mm-hmm.
But since it was so severe that they wanted him out of the country, so him and his brother came to America.
What year are we talking roughly?
Oh, geez, I was born in 49. This had to be in...
Turn of the century, probably.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they settled in this general area,
Well, they
George?
settled outside of Philadelphia in a little town called Ambler.
Yeah, sure.
And he wound up coming to the city. When he moved to the city, we took his brother with him, and he had a business. And I was 6 months old, crawling on the floor. I happened to be in a room with my great uncle, and my mother hears a shot, runs upstairs. He blew his brains out while I was in the room. My mother said there was blood on me. But the worst part about it, he ripped up the 20,000 in little pieces.
Oh.
So my mother used to say, listen, it's a shame that he blew his brains out, but why the F did he rip up the 20,000? So there was a bank in our neighborhood. It's still there, the building. It's still title on the Bank of Italia, where the Italian people used to go. The clerk spoke Italian, this and that. So Sal, his name was Sal, and he retrieved the money little by little.
Is that right?
Got the family to 20,000 back.
Stop
Little
it.
by little, yeah.
But George,
So,
on a lighter note, tell them about.
There's a lighter note. Too late.
Your family and the Embase with the 7-Up and the root beer.
oh, there was one more guy on the boat. His name was Anthony. And so they both moved to the same neighborhood. They both went to Ambler. Back in those days, Italians went where they were grouped up.
Right.
It just so happens they had Kennex in Ambler. That's where he met my grandmother. When you came, they used to meet in house parties. And Tony met his wife at a house party. My grandfather met my grandmother at the house party. And then they moved into the city, my neighborhood. And this, from my grandfather's grocery store, a salesman came in and he saw something he never seen before, was soda. Frank's, I think it was Frank's Soda Beverage Company. And my grandfather said, what the hell do these people drink? You know? So he invented a root beer soda. He was the first person, I believe, to bring root beer to America. My grandfather, and I think depression hit. He couldn't survive the soda and the store, so he had to sell the store. I believe he sold to a guy named Hires, which
Hires
he
Root
sold it to A&W Root Beer. But Tony, his last name was Mbezi, and he was the founder of 7-Up.
7-Up.
The Mbezi family.
Really?
So these
Yeah.
two
All from our neighborhood.
dirt poor,
Wow.
dirt poor guys come to America, and
Make soda company.
Yeah.
So 7-Up is from South Philly.
Absolutely.
from 8th and Montreux, the
Right.
factory was there, and the Mbezi family sold it for $400 million some years back.
Wow.
Today
Good-
it would
good
have been
family
Yeah,
people,
adjusted
too.
for
Good
inflation.
people.
Yeah, you're in the bill. You're in the
Inflation.
bill.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, George, we've been talking for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and already you've told us a number of remarkable anecdotes about your childhood or your family history. But one thing's for sure, you've lived a pretty tumultuous life in general. So we're really curious to understand, as you're coming up, how you ultimately found yourself working with cannabis in the first place, and the impact that had on your early
Well,
life.
you know, I came home, it's legal. I couldn't go back to the streets selling it.
But in the first place, when you first
when you
got
were so
involved
yeah,
with
how
it-
old were you when you just got like
You and Dennis, your first run down to Mexico.
Yeah.
How old were you? You and Dennis.
15, I think he got a driver's license. I had a learner's permit.
Mhm.
And I had a 52 Chevy. They had a big trunk, and we had some money. We went all the way to LA. We had a connect. Mexicans had it. I think we were paying $20 a pound, driving all week. We put almost 300 pounds in there.
Is this about
In the
the
trunk.
is this the 70s, George?
Oh my, I'm 67, 66,
Late
66.
60s. Late
Wow.
60s.
So you just saw an opportunity to make some money
Well,
and figured,
the worst thing the lawyer told me, you're a minor, don't worry about it.
uh-huh,
Don't tell me that. He said,
Right,
if you get
right,
locked
right.
up, don't worry about it.
uh-huh.
He said,
So
you're going to do a couple days, but you're a minor. So that's all you had to tell
He did
me.
his first run at 15, 16 years old.
so
he got
15,
driver's
16,
license.
you're driving across the
Cross country,
country.
Across the country. We
Across
were,
Highway 80
Yeah,
or whatever the fuck it
57
is, all the way
exactly, right.
across.
you got to
57
understand,
Chevy?
growing up
Yeah.
back then, it was totally different. You were on your own. You didn't get no money from your parents. You got a roof over your head and some clothes, and that was it. They fed you. That
You
was
get
it.
ugats.
You get and then you got to start earning. Somehow you got to start earning.
There was
Exactly.
no thing like coming out of the house and going to give me $5. I'm
There's no
going out.
allowance.
No way. No way. So I was a kid making some good money. I don't know how we made it. I did it twice. I did the trip twice.
But you never went to Mexico, or you just went to LA, or did you go into
Went
Mexico?
to LA. We had connects in LA.
Yeah.
And we bought the weed. We did good with it. And I always remained in the weed business, except for that 32 years. I was absent from it.
Right. So about that 32 years, I mean, to the degree that you're comfortable sharing, what led to the point where ultimately, George, you ended up incarcerated?
Well, I knew I was going to be indicted, and I actually living out of the country. I was living in Costa Rica, where I had a lot of connects, and I set it up where they couldn't bring me back.
Well, so you were caught with a lot of marijuana.
I never got caught with anything.
Oh.
I never got caught with a joint.
What was
Conspiracies. It's
It was all conspiracy.
all my indictment was conspiracies, most of them falsified.
Can you share why that they wanted to go
Well,
after you?
I had a crew on the street selling weed, of course. You know, I used to bring in loads. Matter of fact, getting back to this town, Haddonfield, I don't think you guys were born. There was a friend of mine here who was in trouble.
No names, George.
No
No
name.
We just call him no name.
He was in trouble, and he had a beautiful
A
house.
friend of ours.
And he was ready to lose everything. I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring a load in. I'm going to stash it at your house. We'll probably move it real quietly and move it all out in about 2 weeks, but we'll pay, get you out of debt. So I bought I bought a load of weed in this town before you were born. I'm talking about a real fancy house, probably a block off of King's Highway. It was loaded with weed.
Yeah, well,
And-
that was the business.
And pineapples back in the day. There was no spray. You got aging pineapples, and you just
Oh, is that
threw
right?
them over the house.
Did it work?
Yeah,
I bet it worked harder
House
than the
smelled
shit that happened.
Hey,
pineapples.
George,
Uh-huh.
Tell them about when you did go to Mexico, and who you were getting weed from there, how you were getting it
In
back.
Colombia. I mean, he was to answer your
Colombia.
question. He from,
Well-
from that first run to when he got arrested in '83, he was very big in the importing.
So the first run in the late middle
That was just
60s
the
to
start,
83.
but-
That was- that was
15.
Well,
exactly.
I
The
didn't.
real enterprise is this.
I didn't like. I dealt with Mexico, but I just
I meant
had
Colombia, George. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I felt more comfortable working Colombia.
Who we working with in Colombia?
Well, I started with a guy named Raymond the Boss out of Barranquilla. That was his name, Raymond the Boss. And I used to get weed from him. And then he didn't have them once. It was dry. So he said, but I got a buddy in Medellín. He had his own plane. I'll fly over there. And that's where I met Pablo Escobar
Hey,
and
you met him in person.
Zelda Blanco. I called her Zelda. They were very close with me. But I only did two loads with them. One he gave me for free. Then they went into cocaine. They said we can't be shipping weed when I can make 100 million flying the coke and then rather than making 10 million. So we stood friends, but I got away from them but we stood friends.
So, George, for those that don't know who you are, tell me if I've got this right. Some late 60s, it sounds about, you picked up your first load, drove across country, Mexico. You ended up getting in trouble, going to jail, 83, it sounds like. In between, it sounds like you really were, you found great success in the marijuana business and ended up ramping it up to a pretty significant endeavor, is what I'm understanding.
When illegal.
Yes.
When I was
Yeah.
illegal.
Yeah.
Illegal.
If you smoke weed from late 70s to 83 in Philly or South Jersey, it was my weed.
Yeah. Wow.
It was my weed.
Is that right?
He
Oh, yeah.
also had his own grows in
Atlantic
Jamaica.
City.
So he was moving weed from Colombia and Mexico, and
It was a multi-pronged operation.
sort of like the same black market as California, but like back in the day, it was different countries. So whoever had the best price. Eventually, like he tried to adjust his bottom line, and then he started his own grow in Jamaica too, which he can tell you about better than me.
Well, I always believed in it. I didn't like these hard drugs, Yeah, back then, there's meth was all over, heroin was all over. I thought it was a saving grace to me, especially the
You
young,
like smoking weed.
young people. I thought it was a saving grace.
Well, actually, I was going to kind of ask the
Like,
same
did you
question.
smoke? Did you smoke?
Did you smoke? Did you take the Biggie Smalls advice? Did you get high on your own supply?
Yeah.
Well, when I was a teenager, I didn't like alcohol. I didn't like beer, didn't like whiskey or wine, but I got introduced to weed and I loved it. I said, this is perfect.
Right.
So
Nowadays, we would call that California sober, right? You don't
Yeah.
drink, you
Right.
just smoke weed and maybe
Cali
some
sober.
mushrooms.
Yeah, you were
100%. Yeah.
you were in
Microdose on the
style.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was an expert smuggler. I used to really use some ingenuity.
In getting the product over.
Yeah, but the most important thing, all my endeavors, illegal endeavors, were nonviolent.
Yeah.
I made sure it was nonviolent. I was adamant about that. That's why my indictment, although it was a nonviolent first offender.
How'd you get the weed here from Colombia?
Well, we started with ships. Well, Pablo were sending loads that were so big. I mean, barges
Barges. Like what was
that hold
ton?
Yeah.
250,000 ton. That's 2,000 pounds to a ton. He was sending in 2 million tons at a time on these barges. But he went from barges to smaller vessels, and they were getting hit. And that's when he said, "That's it." He went to planes and cocaine, and then I went to Jamaica and started doing my own thing.
Well, roughly what time was that, George?
When I went to Jamaica,
Yes.
well,
Mid-70s?
yeah, before 1980.
Mid to late
Jamaican
70s?
was a great place. Very honorable people around me, Jamaican people.
We're talking about
Hey, I
Kingston,
was the
right?
first
Around there.
white person. I don't know if you ever heard of the Moroccans in the Blue Mountains.
I've heard of the Blue
Well,
Mountains.
let me tell you something.
Yeah.
If you went up in those
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
you
right,
went up
exactly.
in those Blue Mountains unescorted, unannounced, you didn't come back.
Really?
Those Moroccans, they had an eternal fire. It's going on for centuries. It's still going. They have eternal fire, big as this room. They have a pit of wall this high, and all they do, throw weed in it, all the time it's burning. All
What
the
the
time it's
Moroccans?
burning.
Sounds like
Why?
a fantasy
Like
line.
Rastafarians.
It's
Rastafarians.
religious.
Oh, the
Yeah,
Rastas.
it's Rastas.
So the Moroccans are basically throwing weed in there. It's like an eternal bonfire.
It's eternal fire. It's been going on for centuries.
Wow.
They're the main ones that fought the French to get them out of
But-
Jamaica. The French were there. French
The
were
Italian
there.
in me. Get
Hey,
him out of
it's
here.
all right.
The French were there before the English, and they fought them. But I made arrangements to go up there. But my friends, I had my own little estate, and I had Jamaicans working there. They were my growers, and they told me, "You might not come back. You go up there, you're not to come back." But I heard that they had weed and nobody to sell it to. That's the worst thing you could tell me, because when
You're like challenge
going after
accepted.
it.
Yeah.
I went up there. I had my escort, and I went up there. I had a white suit,
Oh, hey.
and the chief. I remember walking across the clearing. He was near. What do you call that thing that burns eternal? They had a name for it.
Burning bush?
No,
Is this still going?
yeah. So it's their spirit.
It's Rastafarian. It's like part of like
Yeah.
their
So
spirituality.
anyway, the chief looked at me and he approaches me. Never forget. He just said nothing. He just came shaking his head, and he turned to one guy, and the guy gave him a machete. I said, "Well, here goes." And then he turned to another guy and gave him an orange, and he peeled the orange with one hand and the machete and skinned it perfectly. And his eyes and my eyes are just arrowed into each other. I guess he wanted to see if I showed any fear,
Mm.
and he peeled this orange. And after that, he shook his head, and that was it. That was the test.
You had a
My
deal.
eyes were the test.
Right.
My eyes were the test. And that was it.
What was the symbolism with the orange? Because orange is,
Well, it was
you
better
know,
that than my head.
Right.
It's probably what was around.
Well, maybe,
Lowest hanging
but
fruit.
like, you know, when you look at like, you know,
So
probably showing how sharp the machete was.
maybe.
What
And-
what about the wedding story in Jamaica, where they were chasing you through the wedding?
no, it wasn't a wedding. It was a photo shoot.
The photo shoot. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we were discussing that, opening my series with that scene, but they felt it'd be a little too expensive, the first episode shooting out of the country. So what we're going to do is, anyway, this was a great scene. I'm on it's called the Blue Moon, Half Moon Hotel Resort in Montego. And they have a beautiful dining area where you had to have a dinner jacket. So I got a white tux dinner jacket, and I meet this model, and I had my own private villa there. They're really cool. They're like a dome, like a big bell. And so I had a nice time with her. Now, the next morning, I got to go into Interior to do a weed deal. Now, Jamaica, the counties are called parishes. Everything's a parish. It's St. Anne's Parish, parishes. So I'm at, I think, St. Anne's Parish. We're doing a weed deal. I'm doing it I used to have the cop there, police. I'm doing a weed deal with them. We're waiting for the plane to come in. And the plane's circling. It's ready to come in. And if I wave it off, it goes off. And we're there. I'm with the cops. This guy's dressed like Idi Amin. He had more medals on him. He's got the hat. All of a sudden, over the hill, some shots get fired. It's the Jamaican military coming at us. Well, when I looked up and I looked back, he took off already, the chief of police.
He left you.
Yeah, he's running and I'm running. I says, hey, what's going on? I says, I paid you to not to let this happen. He says, yeah, but I didn't pay them.
Oh man.
So we're running, and I hit a hill, and I wind up stumbling. I must have stumbled 50, 60 yards down this hill. And when I finally rolled onto a little narrow block top road, guess what I rolled into? The model's photo shoot.
Stop it.
Yeah, so
It's not even possible.
I jumped up and I said, who's ever white, run. Because they had a couple worker black. I said, whoever's white, run.
Now.
And they're shooting. And I took off, but I looked to my right. There's the model. She kicked off to her high heels. She's running stride for stride. You know, it was weird because I just had made love with her this morning. But I knew the waterways. The poor people use rivers. You had to know the rivers, and they have these rafts, and you tip them, and they'll take you from point A to point. So I got her to a raft. I got her to safety, and then I've never seen her again.
I wonder why.
Yeah, right.
She didn't know who I was. I never used my real name.
Oh, you didn't. You always had aliases.
What was that name?
When I got arrested, I had $20,000 in my pocket and 6 passports with different names.
Wow. Were they Italian name passports, or were you like John Smith?
No, all American passports.
So George,
Different names.
1983. This was the year that you were.
September 19th, I was arrested. 1983. Yeah.
And
Where?
Oh, where? It was North Miami. I think it was the Hilton in North Miami on, forget which street. Anyway, I had to meet this guy. He's the guy that set me up. Businessman too, very prominent businessman. And I always used to meet him at his office. I should have caught on because he says, meet me across the street at the Hilton Pool Bar. So I go there, and you got to remember, I'm living in Costa Rica at this time. I'm not coming back. I had to come back here. I left of such a void in the weed community that the Colombians and the Cubans were going to go to war over the void. And they told me, listen, you got to come back. There's going to be blood on the streets in Philly. There's going to be blood in Miami. And they sent a plane. I finally commit. I said, okay. I said, I'm just coming in straight. I came in, straighten out the war, and I was flying out. Matter of fact, I told the pilot to keep playing on the tarmac. In other words, you have to pay. Be in takeoff mode, you have to pay. You're just not. So he's paying, ready to take off anytime. And so I straightened out the beef, and this guy used to hold money. He had an office, and he had a safe. And over the years, I used to have people drop off money there. And he's been looking for me for 6 months. He finally found me on a phone call, and he says, hey, where you been? And I said, I didn't tell him I was in Costa Rica. Anyway, he says, listen, I got this money. I figured, let me grab this money. It was, I think, 20, 30 grand. So I meet him, but I knew right away when I walked up to him, his armpits were soaked from to his belt. Both arms. I knew right away. I said, you rotten effing son of a bitch. And I couldn't finish what I was saying because there was at least 100 red dots on me.
Wow.
The barmaids, there was 2 barmaids, they were agents. They had guns on me. They had girls in a pool with guns in plastic bags with dots on me. All girls around the pool. I don't know. I guess they knew I liked girls because there was no guys. George, it was
That's
all
how your
girl
movie
agents.
should start.
Huh?
That's how it should start.
Yeah,
Sure.
really.
Podcast is gonna start.
So I had all these
I know.
red
Editor,
dots on
clip
me.
that out.
Yeah, that is
Click.
Yeah.
But I tell you in all honesty, if I'd have known the tortures that were waiting for me and the money that would have been wasted on attorneys, I would have went like that. They blew me away. I wouldn't have had to suffer for 32 plus years.
But then the GrowFather wouldn't be here taking over New Jersey.
That's true. So
Wow. Well, and George, am I correct that you were sentenced to life without parole?
I
Is
was
that
the first person in Pennsylvania, life, no parole, and the fourth person in America. Now, the three before me were whales: Nicky Barnes, Herbie Sperling, good friend of mine, and Felix out of L.A. They were whales compared to me. They were in heroin business. I wasn't in the heroin business. So it was a complete setup.
Sellout.
what was it to get? Why? Like
It made me rat because you got to understand, Philly went through 3 mob wars
Right.
back to back. Over 80 guys killed in a short time. I don't know about the killings, but no arrests.
So they were trying to
They
infiltrate.
needed someone that knew the inside. And my father was Long John. My godfather was Angelo Bruno. I mean, that's the top of the top. So they figured Washington said, pressure this guy. And they pressured me to an extreme, inhumane extreme. Matter of fact, I'm trying to get my indictment exonerated with the new administration. And then I'm putting $100 million lawsuit, what they did to me. They tortured me, literally. In other words, when you give someone life, no parole, you're coming home in a body bag. What justifies would put me in solitary for first 5 years? It would justify that.
What was it like when you first heard that you were facing life without parole? What was that?
I never heard of
like?
it to that day. We
Wow.
were negotiating 10 years. Then we went up to 15 years because my lawyer was getting bad publicity, brought the judge into his publicity. First case in the history of American courtroom, whether it was state or fed, where a judge, my judge, came with his robes in through the door where prisoners are brought into the courtroom. So you got a judge sitting behind a podium with his robe. You have another judge on a witness stand with his robe. The jury don't know what the hell's going on. So my lawyer orchestrated that to beat the case, and he did beat the case. But it was bad for me because it was nothing but bad publicity after that on the judge's part. Now I'm facing sentencing 2 weeks from that newspaper articles.
Now, wait, clarification. The judges came and they beat the case because his attorney was on trial. It was the attorney's case. So the judges were actually character witness for his attorney, which was unheard of. So George believes he was sold out by his attorney, basically.
Really?
Totally so. I never knew he was being indicted. I actually indicted twice while he was my attorney.
Yeah.
So I was getting Nicky Scarfo who incidentally, me and him we had good blood and went into bad blood, especially in Atlanta Penitentiary. That's a whole nother story. But anyway.
You were in there with Scarfo?
Yeah, we were at each other. Anyway, they suggested that because I'm not tall as my father, he's Long John, that would I mind playing Nicky Scarfo in my series? I said, yeah, nobody knows him better than me. When you go to war with somebody, you know him.
Right.
And so they want me to play Nicky
George,
Scarfo.
talk a
In
little-
the series, they want you to play Scarfo.
George, tell me who your
It's been discussed.
George, mention who your celly was and what.
Oh, John Gotti was my cellie for over 2 years.
Down in Atlanta?
No,
In Lewisburg?
MCC, New York, where he was pre-trial. I love John. We were in 22-hour yacht lockup for a year. When you're in a cell with a guy 22 hours a day, you get to know each other.
What year is this that you and Gotti?
I was with John 86, 87.
Oh, so this is
Well,
while
his
he-
first
this is
case.
before.
First case. His
Yeah,
first
yeah,
case.
yeah.
And then he got indicted 2.5 years
Was that after
later.
Castellano?
George, how do you, I mean, this is such a broad question, I know, and hard to answer, but how do you mentally cope with that situation? Or how did you learn to cope with that situation
do or
as
you
you're
die.
dealing with it?
It's very how many guys didn't make it out when they get lengthy sentences? They just mentally, physically give up. They hang up.
What worked for you?
I
Talk about your reentry programs, George.
No, I was going to say, like, you started writing, didn't you? Like,
oh
didn't
yeah,
you publish
I'm the
30
most
something books?
prolific writer in the world from incarceration.
Was that a creative
I
art
wrote
that
over
just
2 million words freehand.
Holy
I have
shit.
it on a hard drive. Anybody wants to bet me, I'll show them on hard drive.
So during his 6 years of solitary confinement, like George talks about, like how they knocked off like the light in his cell, so he was in complete darkness. He would sharpen. He found a pencil in his cell, like a number 2 pencil, and he would consistently sharpen that down and write on the walls. So, that was the only way he could stay sane. He had no one to talk to, like nothing to
So
do.
the worst thing you can do to an individual, put them in darkness. You have no idea what darkness can do to you.
So writing's a part of his.
Now you couldn't
of his
see what you were
journey.
writing.
Right.
Exactly.
You know what? I couldn't see it, but I saw it.
Saw it in your mind.
It's
In
the
my- in
feeling
my
of
mind.
just,
Mind's
It's not
eye.
the writing, it was fighting the rats. I had to fight rats for 2 nights. You ever try fighting rats? You couldn't see them till they were up on me because they threw me in what you call boxcar cell, which are totally illegal in the 40s. There are four stair walls, no window, with 2 double steel doors. The how you relieve yourself is a hole in the floor with like a clutch. You push the clutch and water comes out. Well, nobody been in the cell for 50 years. So they throw me down there and there was no food. That's when they brought me my meals, which they used to be a little flap under the 2 stores. The flaps used to go either way, and they used to shove the food with a stick like an animal. And I guess the rats start smelling the food. They start coming up the hole. But I'm in darkness, so I didn't see them till they were right up on me, basically. And good thing I had bus shoes, because the bus shoes, I'm killing them, smashing them. And
6 years of this?
no, that not in a box. I'd be dead. No one can survive a boxcar for 6 years. I lost count. I think I was there 10 days, 2 weeks.
but he did 5 years in total solitary confinement.
Solitary.
And he did nothing wrong to be put in solitary. That was his first 5 years in jail.
Now, to answer your question, how do you deal with it? How do you get
You
through with the daily
process
day?
that.
I asked him. I said, George, were you counting days or months? He said something to me which really hit home, especially being Italian, those guys. He said, I started to count the Christmases that I was away.
It's easier just to
So I
count
was
the
away for
Christmases.
32 Christmases.
They would tell you when it was Christmas.
Oh, I knew. Well, believe it or not, solitary, a year to me was 6 months when you're in solitary. You're such a regimental routine.
Yeah.
That it goes by. But a lot of people don't make it. I ain't all there yet.
I'm curious to ask on a personal front. Did you meditate
I worked out. I wrote
in darkness?
I just wrote.
I think the writing becomes the meditation.
Worked out, push-ups, and you're talking about when I was in a boxcar?
Well, so the boxcars in darkness, solitary confinement, you have some light. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. But it was illegal to do. You cannot. We have a Supreme Court case called the Robert Strauss. Or Strauss, Strass. Robert Strauss is the Birdman of Alcatraz.
Oh, yeah.
Burt Lancaster made the movie. He's the Supreme Court case. He was sentenced to solitary. Took him 22 years before he beat the case. You cannot sentence someone and put him in solitary. So they kept moving me to make it legal. And the first year was terrible because they moved me across country with a bus. That means it took me 3 months to get to California, 3 months to get back. That means every night you're stopping at some county jail, you're stopping at a police station, you're stopping at a marshal's. I mean, you're thrown in a hallway, locked in a closet. I mean, it's just like a dog. And it got so bad that sometimes you luck out, there'd be another guy in a marshal's car with you or on the bus. They move you from the bus to marshal's car. They had a method to their madness. To say I met Chris and I took a liking to him, I said, listen, me and you are going to fight and make it look good. Because now you fight, you're going to the hole and you're missing the bus or you're missing the marshal's transport. You get to stay for 2 weeks
In one place.
and place
One
and rest
place.
because
For that.
you can physically die like that every day on the road. And I mean, brutal.
Lesser of two evils. Tell them about your reentry program.
Well, the entry is very big in America. It wouldn't be reentry in America. First, we started in the feds, then the states adopted it, and you even have some county facilities. Reentry is preparing you in lifestyle changes for when you're released. I created that, started creating that in the early 90s. We got it approved. Took us about 8-9 years. We got it approved from Washington. And it's the biggest funded program within the Bureau of Prisons.
If you were sentenced to life, was it at some point in the 90s you saw that there might actually be an end to this? At which point you started
There's
looking
no
at it?
end. There's no end. I fought it till I got out.
Yeah, over 30 appeals. He kept appealing.
Kept
32
appealing,
appeals.
appealing, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
But
32. But I didn't know how. Remember this sentence, ladies and gentlemen listening. Remember this sentence. It's been prevalent for a long, long time in America. The hardest case to beat is a frame. Remember that. Because they're not going to throw other people under the bus for you. And once you're framed, either you're going to, very few people beat a frame. I was framed.
So the reentry program then was something that you were working on for others that wanted to reassimilate into
For
society.
I was a mentor
For
educator.
a positive purpose, to give
Yeah.
back. Like, his life, that was his only purpose left.
right, because you thought that you were done.
Life in
So
prison. Like, this
yeah.
is his life. Like, those
He started
four
so
walls,
many programs,
becomes your
educational
life.
programs, suicide watch programs. He was doing it all for the good of his
What
fellow
are you,
inmates.
what are you going to
Yeah.
do? Go sit in the yard with gangs?
Right,
George,
right,
There's
right.
8, 9 gangs in the yard. I knew all the shot called, hey, what am I going to do?
So George
So I wanted to
graduated.
I always was a worker. I always was a hustler. Michael will tell you that. My family had the biggest vending business for 30 years. He used to see me, a kid working. You had to work. So I always was regimented to do something, get up and do something.
Positive. Something positive.
Right.
Yeah. And it gave him power too. Like it not
Yeah.
indirect power with the warden and the, adjudication system. He graduated over 8,000 inmates, so that looks good on the warden as well. And he had a great relationship with the warden. He de-escalated, gang wars. He stopped. Tell him about the commercial, the transport plane hijacking.
Well, you can Google that, ladies and gentlemen. Just say George Martorano, handcuff key. You heard the movie Con Air with Nicolas Cage? Well, I lived it.
Really?
I lived it. And
For those that haven't seen it or forget,
you can Google it. It made the media. It's George Martorano, handcuff key. It'll be in my film.
okay.
It'll be in my film where I was on a transport. I had just lost appeal in Philly. I was going from Philly to Oklahoma Transit Center. People don't know, and any day in America, Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday, there is 6 to 7 jets with close to 300 inmates every day in the sky. Every day in the sky in America for the last, oh Christ, they start flying planes.
Since they made planes, yeah.
Well, when I first went in, they didn't have the planes. They had buses. When they started getting planes on drug buses, they start converting them to prisoner transports. They were like DC-6s. And then they went and bought some jets. Like today, what's today? What day of the week is it?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
There's planes in the sky right now with prisoners. I happen to be on a transport, and I know the days that I would fly. You get through the grapevine when you're going to get shipped, and I will usually stay up that whole night. A lot of push-ups, a couple thousand push-ups. So when I hit that plane, I'm on that plane. You could be on that plane from 8 to 16 hours.
You know where you're going, right, George?
Up and down. You don't know. I'm flying and taking the. So I figure, I prepared that's not the first time I was on a prison transport. You want to sleep. You got to sleep. And I was sleeping and I felt some movement around my feet. And I was on the back of the plane where there's about 12 guys back there and 2 buddies of mine from New York. I wake up. They said, there's something around your feet. They're trying to get. I said, who's trying to get? He says, them guys behind you. Who was behind me was 3 Somali pirates. Can't speak a word of English. They all got life. Remember when they were hitting those ships
Yeah.
out there in, I forget what sea.
Off of Africa and shit.
Yeah, they were hitting. They grabbed these pirates. They gave them life. And this air marshal, dropped his handcuff key accidentally. There's 100 seats this way, 3. He had to drop it right under my feet.
Wow.
So I don't know. I don't have my glasses on. I use reading glasses. I'm looking. There's about 3 inches long with a rubber grip.
Yep.
And they're what you call speed keys because they uncuff your leg irons and handcuffs. They don't have time to do different keys. So bang, bang. They're called speed handcuff keys.
That's the way out.
I think it's a pen. And I looked closer. I said, oh, my God. Now, if you held that in your hand to do a good deed, they're going to kill you. Anybody that thinks they're coming out of handcuffs and leg irons on a prison transport over America don't know what the F they're talking about. You will be killed. They are expert shots. There's 3 real air marshals, and then there's 6 contract marshals. They're 3 real marshals. They're expert shots with the red beam. And they have holsters that are computerized releases. And boom, they would have killed me instantly. Anybody around that key is going to get killed instantly.
So what happened?
What happened? I'm fighting these pirates because they're trying to grab it with their toes. These nuts don't know what they're going to get us all killed. And they can't speak a word of English. So I'm wrestling their feet. They're trying to kick my hand. And so I finally held it in my hand. I said, oh, here's where I get dead. Here's where I get killed. I said, I got one shot. They're very narrow aisles on these planes. I flipped it and it went right into this groove where they couldn't get it. So one marshal walks by, he says, hey, you dropped your key, right? Oh, my God. Next thing I know, they rush me. They take me to the front of the plane. There's always some empty seats in front of the plane. And they have this, it's a roll, Velcro on a roll. And they slap your seat and it locks. And then they wrap you in the seat. They Velcro me wrap. And then they put a hood over my head. I did the good deed.
Yeah, right.
There's no sense saying nothing. You got to ride with. What am I going to say? I figured they'll iron it out. With my buddies back there, they were good guys. And I didn't have too much time left to fly. I think I stood that way about another hour and a half. And I knew, as soon as that plane landed, they start calling roll call. I was the first name they called, and who was waiting for me? The FBI. You got to understand, these guys could all get fired. They had to make me look like the bad guy.
They made you the scapegoat.
Right.
And they took me to some weird, they didn't even take me to the detention center, federal detention center, transport center. They take me some little county jail. I still can't pronounce the name of the town. And they threw me in the hole, right? And about 3 days later, they came and, all right, Martorano, we got the story, and they took me back to the transit center where I'm going to catch a plane to my prison. But I said, where's the report? Every prisoner travels with, it's called a traveling jacket. I said, where's the report? Oh, it's in your traveling jacket. They lied. When I got to the prison where I'm known, the lieutenant was intake. He said, they used to call me George. Joe, we heard what happened. What happened? Tell us what happened. And they were all in the room. The warden, I says, what? They said, George, we have no report. I said, what? The warden said, George, if I had that report, what I can do for you?
I want to segue into prison to business. And like, how did that happen? Like, while you were away, college, as they say, did you know that it was becoming legalized, like marijuana? Did you understand that, how things were turning on the outside?
Well, yeah. Well, if there a few states went into it, I said, this is the business for me when I get out. I mean, I have this story of suffering behind it, but we'll go a little earlier than that. I was the first prisoner ever in the world when PayPal came out. I think PayPal came out, early 90s?
I would have guessed later, but you're probably right.
I created a website called Mob King Pen, PEN.
They let you create websites?
I created it, and basically it was for like $1.99, you get a short story. They were all fiction. And I needed, always paying lawyers. I had children to raise, so I always needed funds. And I created this website. It did quite well. The host company was out of Fort Lauderdale, because my cousin has the most famous restaurant there for 32 years, and they were customers anyway. So I created this website. And, you know, the sneaky powers that be, they came, rolled into my cell. I was at a joint, I think Texas at the time. Anyway, penitentiary. They came in the middle of the night, roughed me up. And
Because you weren't supposed to be running a website.
Excuse me?
Were you not supposed to be running a website?
Well, it's freedom of speech. You know, I'm not writing anything about trying to escape or how to get by in prison. They were fiction. And they roughed me up pretty good, chained me up and shipped me. Another prison. I didn't take down the site. I was at that prison maybe a month or two. They came in and really, really roughed me up. Took a beating. And but they're cowards. They first handcuff you before they start beating you. And I remember my face on the floor, and all you see is boots. And I seen one guy pull out a knife out of his boot. This is a guard, federal prison guards, and and wait a minute, I like to refer, not all people work in prison are bad people. Some of them have good relationships, staff, guards, whatever. Anyway, he put the knife to my right wrist. He said, let's cut his hand off. And, you know, I said some things about his mother that he didn't like. And they shipped me again. So finally I had enough of it. And I got a lawyer friend of mine out of Baltimore, and he went and had a meeting with the head of the Bureau of Prisons, and it stopped after that.
You asked if he was aware of it becoming legal when he was away. George, tell him the story about when the warden called you in after he was on vacation.
Yeah, I had a good warden that time. Forget his name. I've been on so many helms of so many different wardens. Anyway, I was laying on my bunk. He knocked on the door. He came in, and I said, "What's up?" He said, "I've been thinking about you." I said, "I didn't do it." And he said, "No, me and my wife just come back from vacation." I said, "Yeah." I said, "We were in Colorado." And I can't help him think about it. I said, "Why?" He says, "My wife went into the dispensary there, and she bought what she liked. I'm standing outside. I can't go in. I'm a warden, you know, because any dispensary, you have to show your license." And he said, "I'm thinking about you, and you're in the cell to the day you die." And my wife just, I says, "Well, put in compassion release to the pardon attorney." And he didn't answer me. So, and then I'm sitting, and then here another state went by. Another state went by. Another state went by. It's just insane. And, you know, I'm getting letters from all over the world. I made myself known to the world by writing hard copy short stories to the world. I had fans in England, France. I had a small town in France. I think it's called with a G, Governor. I used to send my short stories. They used to convert it in French and post it over the town. And when I needed some documents to finally come home, they signed a big petition, this whole town.
Wow.
So, George, how did you ultimately end up getting out?
Yeah.
Well, that's
right here
for sure.
in this brain.
No
right
doubt
here.
about that.
Right, brain here. Well, my Washington eventually it was known throughout the justice system that I got screwed.
Yeah.
So when Obama was a senator, I had some advocate groups went all through Congress, all through the Senate, and they gave I used to write books, have published. And incidentally, Obama read my book. It's called Pain Grows a Platinum Rose. And when he became president, he interceded when I filed my petition for to the pardon attorney. When you file anything to the pardon attorney, you cannot be in court. You can't have any documents in court. You can't have any motions filed. You have to be free of court. And it's just, which I didn't like because I was always in court. So I figured, all right, let me lay off. It was on the pardon attorney's desk. Just so happens something came up, okay, that I had to utilize to go back in court. And I felt, well, you got to notify the pardon attorney that you're going back into court. That is protocol, legal protocol. We notified the pardon attorney. They said, we just send it to Obama. So, George, do you want it? So I was like between a rock and a hard place. It's on Obama's desk. Now, I could sit there till he had 2 years to go in his term. It could sit there. And maybe they usually, a guy like me, in the 11th hour, they'll sign off on me. So I didn't know what to do.
And this was Obama's second term, right?
Yeah. This is the second term. I think he had another 2 years to go.
So we're looking like
What he did
2014,
for me,
15.
what this man did for me, he said, there's the only case ever in the history of the pardon attorney's office, ever. He sent word, leave his paperwork be. Let him see what happens in court. Never been done before.
Obama said this.
Obama sent word. No, I don't think he even wrote anything. He just maybe sent one of his staff pick up the phone and says, make sure his papers are on your desk and they're on my desk. So so I went into my last motion, which I created. I wasn't getting any relief in the Third Circuit. I don't like to get into too much legal talk when I do interviews because the public doesn't understand it. So, but anyway, I got myself back in court by creating another case in New York City. I created in New York City with an individual and won. So I brought that case into Philly and won. It took quite a while.
Did you study legal?
No, I learned the hard way.
Just
Learned the
going
hard
through
way.
it.
Just learned going through the motions.
I
and
learned the hard way.
reading
I could probably open my own law firm.
Yeah. So what happens? Let's fast forward. Talk to us about the moment you realize that you're getting.
I found out it was 2015, October 12th. I was one of my classes, and then they want to see you, whether it's your unit manager, your counselor, the warden comes over to intercom. Said, Martorano, report to lieutenant's office. No, the AW. Warden's office are never on the inside of a prison wall. They're always on the outside. But when a warden comes in, he'll use the AW's office, the assistant warden. So he's an assistant warden. He says, where you been? I said, I've been working. But he says, your lawyers have been calling all day. You should push the phone. Call your lawyer. So I called my lawyer, great man. I had three of the best lawyers in the country. Anyway, he said, are you sitting down? I says, no, there's nowhere to sit. What's on your mind? He says, oh my God, he's screaming, I got your release order. I got your release order in my hand, but you won't be able to be released till Monday. You're not getting out of Saturday and Sunday unless it's like a presidential order.
Yeah.
So I says, okay. He says,
You said okay.
That's it.
I said,
What do you
okay.
mean you said
And
okay?
he's
Get outta
screaming,
here.
don't you want? I said, hey, listen, you. I said, I've been hearing this for years. When I'm walk out of here, I'm
Yeah.
out of here. But right now, I'm in here.
You had had
Right.
a few other moments where you thought you were getting out and it was a rug pull. They didn't let you out after.
I didn't know there was so much.
Until you're actually outside.
There was
right?
actually one FBI agent and one prosecutor that was their life dream to make me die in jail for some reason. And so it was, now I got to go through Saturday and I got to go through Sunday. And
You don't sleep Sunday night, I'm sure, right?
well, they just came out with a law that you can get like 2 years knocked off your sentence. You had to file a simple motion. And I must have put in 100 of them for prisoners. It was a standard motion. All I did was sign your name. But I needed a little something from your paperwork. And it was two old timers. They were procrastinating. I says, will you give me your damn paperwork so I can get this knocked off your sentence? And so I figured I'm going out Monday morning. I did all day Saturday, because you have to have it typed up. You have to make copies, so many copies to court. You have to put in legal envelope. You had to put stamps, these old timers. I spent all day Saturday. I didn't want to walk out of there without helping these two old buddies of mine, two old mob guys. Anyway, I figured, finally I could relax. Sunday morning, I'm having coffee and somebody say, hey, the gay community's out front. They want to talk to you. It just so happens in 2015, there was something going around the country for gays in a positive light. There was something. And I said, what do you want? They don't know I'm going home Monday morning. He says, oh, we want to have a gay day in the yard. We want you to get it okayed.
You were in some.
These are fellow inmates. No, fellow inmates.
I says, listen, put something in writing, and then I'll bring it up to the lieutenant's office. Put something in writing. You know, if you're going to have food in the yard, you're going to have beverages, you're going to have music. You know, put something in writing. They said, okay. I figured I'd get rid of them. I'll be out of here Monday morning.
Yeah.
This is Sunday morning. You know, no son of a guns. They were back a couple hours later. They had it all written down, all typed up.
There you go. Took care of business.
So I says, I bring it. And the lieutenant, friend of mine over the years, I know him for 20 years, he says, are you nuts? You're going home. What are you doing? I said, listen, they don't know I'm going home. Just okay it, will you? So I got that done. And now then the yard closes. It was October in Florida. So the yard closes about 8:15. And I figured, I could really go somewhere and get by myself and really think. And I just went by and I found a place in the yard and, I start crying. And then Monday morning, I was good to go. The warden came to my cell. He said, Martorano, I'm going to have to lock down the compound. The whole prison wants to walk you to where you outdoor. It's called R&D. You're not getting out of any jail. R&D is receiving and departure. You're not leaving any jail or coming to any jail unless you go through R&D. So I said, don't do that. Don't lock them down. I said, if you want, lock them in the cell block where they can cook, watch TV, get on the phone. Don't do that. Please don't do that. He says, all right. So he locks them in. Now I'm going across the compound. The warden's walking me. All the windows, everybody's banging on the windows. Everybody, the whole prison. Guards are coming out, shouting. And in prison, you have 2 perimeter trucks, 24 hours a day, year round. One goes this way, one goes that way. They're beeping their horns. So is and then, like I said, I get out. My lawyer, my 2 sisters was there. And really, I really doesn't. My lawyer says, I never seen a guy like you. I really didn't. I figure, all right, I'm out. But I ain't been in a car in years. I've been on buses, planes, but I ain't been in a car. So I get in the back seat of the car, and we're headed to an hour and 10 minutes to St. Pete, Florida. My sisters, and I got a cell phone in his hand, cell phone calls from all over the world. and what happens? I'm headed. I'm starting to get car sick. I ain't never been in a car in years. So,
I bet.
and I don't want to show to anybody I'm getting car sick, And that was it. I went to my sisters, and we had but I had a phobia. I didn't know I had a phobia. I've been living in cells for 32 years and on bunks. I didn't know what a bedroom was. I haven't slept in a bed. I didn't like it. So
You never had a cell phone, George.
Yeah.
You never had a cell phone, a color
no,
TV?
nothing. And so I started making my bed up like I'm sleeping in it, and I'm sneaking out on the porch and sleeping outside because I
Oh,
want
my
to look at the
goodness.
sky.
Right.
That moon.
So a neighbor ratted me out. Some woman going, he says, who's that guy in funny pajamas? Told my sister,
Oh my
he's
God.
sleeping on your porch. So my sister said, are you sleeping? I said, yeah, I just don't like inside anymore. So I went somewhere one day. I was gone a few hours. I came back, and her and her girlfriend put this real cute blue tent in the yard. And they made it up for me. They had little lights around it.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And I used to just had a little table, had a little thing to hang my clothes. And I had a flat. I just used to look for
Wow.
months looking up at the stars until the storm came. And me and the tent went flipping through the yard. That ended my tent there. But at 3 months, I slept in a tent.
So George,
Incredible.
incredible story. I feel like we've only scratched the surface. That's why we need to have you back.
I'll be back. Like I said, I like to work with you guys. I do a lot of podcasting, and this is this NJ right here, very professional. I don't usually going to go. Listen, like I said, I've been around the country doing these, and you guys are very good, very professional.
Appreciate that
I
very
love
much. We
that.
can't wait to have you back. But at this point, we want to shift into part 2.
Right.
So if you're
little
watching,
business,
if you're
yeah.
listening, make sure you click on the next episode. We're going to get into the cannabis business, what it takes to launch a cannabis CPG, how the team at Little Leaf Labs and GrowFather did it. And make sure you click that next link to get to the next video. But for now, we're off to the next episode. Make sure you click.